Welcome to Zoom In, Zoom Out, your global look at news from Taiwan. I'm Rik Glauert. A 20-year delay in a hydroelectric dam project in eastern Taiwan could finally be over. But the indigenous communities who live in the area say that the dam could threaten their ways of life and their livelihoods. Before we're joined by our guest today, let's take a look at how this dam is impacting the land around it. Our reporter, Rik Glauert, went down to Hualien and he has this report for us.
The Fengping River, one of the last remaining free-flowing rivers in the country, is facing a change. A hydroelectric dam project that has been dormant for decades may finally be built here, generating enough clean energy to power 55,000 households per year. The proposed dam project would use a diversion-type system, where the elevation difference between the water's entry and exit points would run a turbine, affecting at least 2 indigenous villages between these 2 points in the river, Dao Sai and Da Vila. For those in these communities, the river not only provides irrigation, but is also central to their culture, as the location is used for hunting and important celebrations.
尤其像原住民打猎真的是文化的一种嘛，我们很多比如说有结婚啦，有丧事啦，过年啦，总是还是会上去走一走嘛。然后加上如果他在那边工作的时候，那附近的这个动物不见了。
And you can watch that full report on the TaiwanPlus news website. Now, to discuss the dam project and how other development projects like this affect indigenous communities, I'm joined by Awi Mona. Awi is a professor in law at the National Dong Hwa University in Hualien, and his research focuses on indigenous rights and international law. Awi, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Rik. It's my honor and my pleasure.
First, let's zoom in on this hydroelectric dam. We just saw in the report that the dam is going to threaten indigenous hunting culture, specifically that the animals in the area may well disappear. Can you explain a little bit more about how the area and nearby villages will be affected by this dam project?
Okay, so the electric dam is located mainly in the Hualien region, and that will be the so-called traditional territory of the local Telugu people and also Sedic people and some of the Bunong people. The ancestral domains used to be occupied, managed and utilized by the local peoples, not only for hunting, gathering and fishing, but also for all other aspects of daily life. Because the dam will mainly use to storage the water for the future use, which means they will kind of stop the flow of the waters. So they might have the impact that will cut out the use of the water into the grazing land or also agricultural land. And that, I think that will be the main influence for the local people on their farming issues. Yeah.
And I understand that there were some opposing voices to this project, but despite those, it's been pushed through. Could you tell us a little bit about that process?
I think because we have the Indigenous Peoples Basic Law, and under Article 21, paragraph 1st, clearly saying that if any private entity or the governmental officials, if they want to do the land development or the so-called construction within the indigenous lands area, the so-called project has to acquire the we call the free FPIC, free prior informed consent, from the local communities. But there's one exclusion requirement: if the construction area is on the private land, then they don't have to follow these procedures. So it has been a huge controversy because the company and the investors, they claim the so-called dam area is not on the indigenous land, which means not on the public land area, which can like immune this project from the FPIC process.
And how are Indigenous people represented at a national level? How can they get their voices heard in controversial decision making like this? Can you tell us a bit about, for example, the Indigenous Peoples Council?
Yeah, actually, in addition to the so-called Article 21 procedure, we always have the parliament agency that can always interrupt or intervene within this negotiation process. But representation within the council is only appointed by the so-called government appointment, without the consultation, even without the consent from the people it belongs. So I recall like international convention, like a third national report review by the international committees has also taken this issue out to recommend the government of Taiwan should incorporate the indigenous participation and consultation to make this representation actually represent the people itself. Yeah.
Do you think that the voting process allowed the local communities there to express their rights as they're outlined in the law in Taiwan?
This is a very hard issue and hard question, because under the idea of the democracy, I think the fair, open, colorblind, this kind of voting system is the general idea of the elections. But in a broader context, let's say, how can we decide a county mayor which can fulfill indigenous anticipation? If we just conduct by the voting, indigenous voice will be like a minimum and even will be eased out. So the reason we developed this Article 21, the procedure in the Indigenous Peoples Basic Law, that's the reason we want to step outside the so-called election box to make the indigenous people voice to be matter, to come to the table. Because if we go into the general voting, the indigenous people still the absolutely minorities.
And of course, the company behind this is saying that the environmental impacts will be minimal, but that it will create jobs and boost the local economy. What's your assessment of that?
The construction company will always bring that up, saying that it will create the job opportunities, they will enhance it can secure the local community members' the incomes. I think it is always one of the main proposal from the construction company's aspect. But another thing is what indigenous people actually concerned is we should have more decision making, or we should have more options on what can happen and what will happen within our land, which means, of course, we care about the job opportunities, of course, we care about our income, but there's always a possibility we can create by other channels, by other options, not like you decide and I can only accept or not.
So let's zoom out now and take a look at the bigger picture. This issue has brought up the potential conflict between protecting Indigenous people's rights and also protecting the environment and pursuing green energy goals. Could you tell us a little bit more about this conflict?
Of course, the energy is a very urgent issue for Taiwan, but why don't we look back to the 1970s? What happened back that time? The Taiwan government created the so-called the nuclear power plant because we need the economic development. We need to support the industry development. But where do the government put the nuclear waste? In Lanyu, in Orchid Island. So don't you think it's like a similar scenario? Right now we need the energy. So of course, we know Taiwan, we don't have full or enough natural resources. So we have put the green energy as our goal. So we have to live on wind power and water and the so-called green energy. But when we talk about green energy, so it has to come to the central mountain area, which is the indigenous land area. So we don't oppose, like myself, I don't oppose the green energy. I don't oppose the so-called green energy. But we have to find a way to accommodate or to find a balance from the local indigenous communities' needs, and also how do they look at what the development should be conducted, not only by the one party to decide.
You mentioned some of the bad examples of Taiwan mismanaging this type of balance in the past. Do you have any examples from Taiwan or elsewhere of how these can be managed better?
I think the good example is built up upon the idea of partnership. I think if we are not starting as a partnership, then the relationship is not balanced. So if we start from the relationship as a partner, and then we will have an equal say. We will sit on the same table. You say I heard, I say you heard. I think it is a process of dialogue and communications. So like in New Zealand, Aotearoa, when they develop the thermal energy, and also in Australia, when they're doing the national government about the environmental conservation and protection, there's always a way, how do we look at the relationship between human and environment, between human and the animal, and also we should do this in Taiwan.
Is there a crossover between both protecting the environment and protecting indigenous rights? And how does that look when it comes to law?
Maybe I would say relatively majority people will see indigenous peoples, the knowledge is not helpful or supporting for the idea of the sustainable environment. Even the Constitutional Court of Taiwan, when they decided on the case of indigenous hunting, the Grand Justice still have the opposing standpoint towards the indigenous hunting culture. But a lot of academic research and the actual local practices has already shown how indigenous, the so-called traditional ecological knowledge from the indigenous people are useful. And also a lot of the scientific evidence has shown that. So I think the older idea or the traditional concept about how do we protect or maintain the environmental sustainability is to exclude or make the people out of nature, make the people out of the environmental system. I think, but right now, even indigenous worldview, we are not out of environmental system. We are part of that system. And I think that is the whole in our legislative system right now. Because if you put the people, the human, out of system, and then you are not part of that, it is hard to incorporate or involve the local participation.
Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your views on Indigenous people's rights and how those intersect with sustainable development and green energy.
Thanks, Rick. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you for watching Zoom In, Zoom Out. For more stories from Taiwan, you can go to TaiwanPlus News website or follow us on social media. I've been Rik Glauert, and we will see you next time.